Madhur John Madden Juanito. This is a postscript to all my exploits feeding the dogs out here. Negro's still hanging out. And at several points in these tapes, I've said it's working for me too. I'm getting healing also. I was real influenced by A Course in Miracles. A Course in Miracles dates from the 70s, I'm pretty sure, is when it was channeled through Helen Schucman, a psychologist at a university on the East Coast, maybe Columbia, I'm not sure. And it influenced me a lot. It has a big, dense, metaphysical text, which I never bothered with. It was way over my head. And a 365 lesson workbook, which theoretically you could work your way through in 1 year. I spent 3 years working my way through it, and then turned around and spent 4 years going through it again. So it influenced me a lot. The third book in that package is called A Manual for Teachers. And the big takeaway for me of that book was they say whether you're a counselor or a teacher or a pastor or a therapist, if you're not getting as much out of the process as you are giving, something is going wrong. You need to be getting healed also. So if you're playing the helper role, that's always toxic, because then the client has got to play the client role. And I just basically ended a 30-year relationship with a guy, friend of mine, in men's groups together, a men's group for 20 years, who has to be the helper, And the reason I finally really set him straight about why our relationship was going nowhere for me was he absolutely refused to learn anything from me. It was not part of his persona. It was a top dog thing. It was absolutely a competitive top dog thing. He had to be the helper. And meanwhile, I was going through all these spiritual changes, and I realized finally he's not watching my videos. He does not want to learn from me. The racket he's playing is he's the helper and he gives. And if he were to learn something from me, that would disrupt the whole thing. So whether you are in the helping role or receiving, check out the balance. Because if you're not both learning, if you're not both growing, if it's not as good for the therapist or pastor or whatever as for you, in subtle ways it's doing more harm than good. It's got to be pure. And I'm influenced a lot by 30 years of re-evaluation counseling. Wikipedia that. Harvey Jackins created it. One of the most brilliant therapists I've ever met, who never claimed to be a therapist. He was the teacher and creator of co-counseling and peer. So even when I played the role of a psychotherapist being paid for my time by insurance or by the person, I made it clear that they understood that the way I was seeing it was that I could just as easily be in their seat as mine. And for various reasons, it was more efficient for them to just pay me and take my time. But the best experience I had was with a very sharp guy, college librarian, who I got involved in the co-counseling community in Rochester, New York, and he thrived, and developed such good counseling skills himself that in our sessions, which he was continuing weekly, I set it up that he would give me 10 minutes of time at the beginning, and I would get off whatever stresses were just top of mind for me so I could pay better attention to him. And I would pay him for those 10 minutes half of my rate because he hadn't been as highly trained. And one day, he liked that a lot, so we'd do a calculation at the end what he actually still owed. One day he showed up, and he was in great shape, and I was a mess. Something had happened. I was really traumatized. So at the end of my 10 minutes, I looked at him, and I said the thing he was thinking. I said, "Can you give me more time?" He says, "Yeah, I want to. You need this more than I do today." So it ended up I took like 40 minutes, and he took 20 at the end. And when we did the calculation, I owed him money. And I said, "Well, we could just take it off of your next session, or I could write you a check." I knew he was going to say, "Write me a check." That check never got cashed. It was on his bulletin board forever. It was part of his graduation. Yeah, Don. Thank you, Don. All right, bye.